Would you like to know what the problem with climate activism is? Then listen to this entire video where I explain its shortcoming and, well, to a degree, how it can be improved. Before we get into it, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you'd like to learn more about self-development, dating, and how to reduce suffering in life. Let's get into it. Disclaimer, I support the goal of trying to reduce environmental destruction. I am all for it. I think it is a very noble and altruistic objective to strive for and is of very high value for humanity in general and for, well, the future trajectory of humanity. Okay, so humans are essentially destroying their own house, and Mother Nature is sort of our guardian, and we are sort of, well, as well, sort of destroyers of the environment, we are neglecting our respect for Mother Nature, and I think that needs to be changed. However, I hypothesize that climate activism is not solving the root of climate destruction, but is simply reducing the manifestation of the problem, which is something else actually at hand. And with climate activism, I mean just the whole movement of trying to reduce carbon emissions, our waste usage or waste production, and the way we sort of exploit the resources of the earth. And the problem here is not that, well, there is the root of the problem is not that we are producing too much CO2 and producing too much waste, which is just distributed into nature. That's not the problem. It is a problem, but it's not the source of the problem. The source of the problem lies within the individual, the citizen of the earth. The individual is currently in a state that is destructive towards its environment and, more importantly, destructive towards itself. And the individual has fallen into a sort of nihilistic pit where there is no meaning in anything and life is not, let's say, what it would hope it to be. So humans, to explain this perspective, I will explain it in the following. So humans have a tendency to adopt suboptimal and nihilistic behavior when their lives are not going well, let's say. If you are suffering and you see no hope in life, then you can easily become resentful towards your own existence. You stop caring about how you conduct yourself in life because life is just a bad joke, hence nothing really means anything, so it doesn't matter how you behave. And you despise your life and your own existence and humanity in general. And that's bad because you don't care anymore how you behave, whether it's unethical or destructive. And I think that is what is currently happening to certain parts of or certain groups in humanity, that they despise their own existence subconsciously. Now, this can manifest itself in destructive behavior like addictions. For example, eating disorders or eating too much. I do think people, not everybody, but a lot of people nowadays simply eat too much in quantity, which isn't really necessary. It's sort of a bad habit that has been nurtured. And they consume too much, and hence they produce too much waste. Because if you would reduce your consumption, you'd reduce your waste. People can resort to sort of retail shopping therapy as an attempt to plug the hole in their soul, this problem they have deep within themselves. And we consume too much because we need to fill a dark abyss within ourselves as a sort of a sedative, sort of like a short-term solution to this uneven energy within ourselves. Now, climate activism, if I'm not mistaken, aims to reduce this excessive consumption, which is a noble goal, which is great, but it's suboptimal. And it's suboptimal because it doesn't take the root of the problem into account. I believe humans would simply find another way to release their existential dissatisfaction if climate change was reduced, and they would find some other channel with which to destroy something. They could, for example, take it out on their relationships, which they already do very often to a degree, and that would perpetuate itself. And, well, I even might go to hypothesize that if the individual isn't fixed, environmental destruction will never significantly decrease because it's a very complex network that goes on. When the individual is dissatisfied, it releases that dissatisfaction in many aspects, socially, in the family, at work, with its health, both physically and mentally. And these destructive manifestations spark reactions in many different fields, and because life is a deeply intertwined, connected network, it'll spark out into so many places, and the probability of it channeling into the environment, into nature, is quite high, because the network is here with the individuals, and nature engulfs it, and the individual is engulfed by nature, so it'll jump out into the nature with almost certainty. And until the individual is fixed, the destruction towards the environment won't really permanently change, I think. I hypothesize, but I'm not sure. So the problem would be to solve the individual's problems, and it would become the individual would need to become more balanced and reduce its volatile energy. What do I mean by this? So there are many issues within humans due to their limited nature, but also to the circumstances that humans are currently situated in. So where do we start? What kind of problems do we have? So here, I've got a few here. So if we tackle these problems I'm about to list, then I think we could be more effective than just simply trying to reduce the human waste output in general. So on the surface, humans have an ego that protects their insecurities. It's like it's a facade, it's a mask. Now these insecurities underneath the mask and the source of them should be made conscious to the humans, to the individuals, and brought into the conscious mind with, for example, accepting the insecurity, because this reduces the need of the human to put up a facade and behave in a way that it really isn't, and also it reduces the stress and anxiety that comes along with the insecurity, because you always need to protect and hide the insecurity, which is exhausting in the long term, and humans end up behaving in ways that are not really them, and they remove themselves from sort of the truth about themselves, and that has a long list of pathologies that can arise as a result, which just perpetuate and can end in destruction. So this would need to be reduced. So humans' insecurities, inadequacies, and hence their egos, I think. Now, this is obviously quite a painful and difficult endeavor, and that's also the reason why it is rarely undertaken, why people rarely try to look at their insecurities and try to solve them, let's say, or reduce them. Now, a manifestation of how the ego can actually destroy the environment is because you might want to consume more in order to maintain your identity. For example, if somebody only dresses with very expensive clothes, they might identify with their choice of fashion, and they may think, I always need to wear a new suit, a new clothing piece every time I go out and meet friends, meet people, so they need to consume more and more and more, and they might think, okay, this was last season's, this clothing piece, this shirt, these pair of pants were from the last season's brand offering, and they're not cool anymore, hence I need to buy the new season's book. What do you call it? Clothing line, whatever. And I mean, fashion brands, fashion industries do tap into this sort of insecurity, I think, by continuously producing new seasons or new offerings regularly throughout the year, which makes the individual think, okay, this clothing piece was from the last season, I need the newest stuff, consumption, more waste, more environmental destruction, hence reduce the ego. Next problem with the human. The human has an unconscious psyche that is in turmoil, I think. It wants to make you behave in a certain way, but it is suppressed by the conscious mind. So the unconscious is a part of you that is sort of related to your instincts and tries to control the majority of your behavior. And it is primed in a way to make you behave in a way that will let you survive, which is optimal for survival. So it'll want you to go out on adventures, go out of your comfort zone, grow. And if you suppress these, then in terms of psychopathology, neuroses can arise from it. But it's quite a complex discussion because it is relatively controversial. Terms like the collective unconscious and archetypes, but it is almost like people like Carl Jung call it a truth, even though it's not physically tangible. It's a truth of human nature that they have a collective unconscious, and if you deny it or suppress it, then you will suffer from it mentally and physically. So, indeed. To give an example of how this unconscious can manifest itself, there are certain contents or archetypes which want you to behave in a certain way, and this goes for men and women. So there will be masculine traits that will be want to manifest themselves as an attempt to survive in life, and if certain feminist movements deny and sort of negatively judge these masculine traits, which are truthfully beneficial to society, then that can result in a pathology within the psyche of the masculine person, let's say, or of the man. Yeah. And this just brings us back to where we started again. These can result in pathologies, in suffering, in neuroses, which just bring us back to the beginning, that you suffer more and detest your own existence, making you adopt irresponsible and nihilistic and destructive behavior. And then we're back at square one again. So finally, the last problem with humans right now, there's many more, but just here's a few. So humans have a need for meaning in life. They struggle to objectively interpret the world. Let's say if they see everything based on science, purely objective, the soul of the human doesn't really like that, I think. The human wants to see meaning inside of things because it justifies suffering. And there's something about the psyche which is predetermined and sort of already interprets it like that. But if it is not delivered knowledge on how to interpret it with meaning, then it feels lost. And I think that is what is happening currently, that humans find meaning through various channels like belief systems, spiritual teachings, but there is quite a short supply of these teachings and these sort of healthy, truthful belief systems, and hence humans are spiritually poor. And Carl Jung believed when you avow any kind of poverty, you bring some fatality onto yourself, some sort of suffering. And Carl Jung has a quote for this. It's a Swiss proverb that goes along the lines of, behind every rich man stands a devil, and behind every poor man stands two. So if you're poor in any kind of sense, not financially, spiritually, all aspects, you bring some sort of fatality and suffering onto yourself because two devils stand behind you, whereas behind the rich man there only stands one devil. Because in order to go from poverty to wealth, you need to transfer, and something needs to die within you in order to transform, and that may likely bring suffering. I think that's how one can interpret it. And poverty is, not financially, but in all senses is a place you don't want to be because it entails suffering, I think. So in conclusion, climate activism is suboptimal because it does not solve the root of the problem, which is currently causing environmental destruction, which is that the individual is suffering on a, let's say, spiritual, meaningful basis, and climate activism does not seem to solve that problem. It is simply seeming to solve the manifestation of the problem, or an effect, a consequence of the problem. Hence, we would need to analyze and try and solve the individual at the singular unit basis So take a look at the individual, what problems does it have, and try to fix its pathologies, neuroses, and reduce its volatile energy and supply what it needs, which is both, I think, science and spirituality, and we can try and combine them, I think, in order to sufficiently deliver what the human desires and what the human needs, let's say, truthfully needs. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this video. Please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you'd like to learn more about self-development, dating, and how to reduce suffering in life. Thank you for listening.